We have a Black data product consultant at the start of her journey within data. And then we've got our head of data product, Chris, who is at a very different position in his journey. And it'll be really, really good to speak with you both and just get a conversation going about Black History Month and being Black in data. Take one. My name's Leah and I'm joined by Senna and Chris from Kubrick. We all work together. Senna is part of our data product stream, which we'll go into in a bit more detail, and Chris is our head of data product stream.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Chris. I'm the head of data product here at Kubrick. Prior to joining Kubrick, I have extensive experience around the data space with large corporate organizations and consultancy companies as well. So I'll be sharing some of the information around data with you during this conversation.
Nice, thank you. Hi, Senna.
Hi, I'm Senna. I was on the data product consultant stream, and I've recently started with my new client. It's in the retail DIY sector. And so I guess I'm here to offer the perspective of someone who's new in the industry and just starting out. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I think that's going to be quite a good conversation piece today anyway, just having two people from different ends of the spectrum within data, two Black people actually, and just talking about how data's evolved within for Black people over time. So yeah, I think it's probably best to start with you, Senna, at the kind of very start of your data journey. How's that been for you? What's your background? How did you get into data basically?
Yeah, so I got into data while I was studying anthropology at UCL. I did a module on digital anthropology and also on medical anthropology. And It had this heavy focus on sort of addressing structural inequalities in healthcare. And of course it is all about data.
Yeah.
And data sheds light on those underserved conditions, and also it sort of promotes people to look deeper into those stories and look at why maybe people from certain socioeconomic backgrounds are predisposed to certain medical conditions, and also people with certain ethnicities like uterine fibroids, for instance, is disproportionately affects Black women. And I think that led me to want to work with data and maybe in the medical industry. So That's
amazing. Yeah. Sorry, I just have to interrupt. I didn't even know this. Can you guys edit this bit out? The fact that you even know that and the fact that you studied that is just amazing. This is a big, big problem that people are only starting to talk about in the news now, is just how, Black women as well, especially in the healthcare spaces, are just completely kind of sidelined.
Exactly.
And for so many reasons, I'm interested in just the psychology behind it. For example, they say apparently doctors are kind of less likely to empathize with a Black person sitting behind next to them. So stats like that, I think to be able to study that at such a young age probably definitely did encourage you to get into the space.
And it was close to home as well because my mum suffers from fibroids.
Okay, yeah.
And
it's very common, honestly,
with
Black women. Yeah.
And she was feeling like the doctors weren't listening to her and they were ignoring her pain, her discomfort, because often there is a tendency to play down the experiences of Black women in healthcare.
Yeah.
And so I sought out an internship with this company that were creating digital interventions for chronic conditions, mainly in the gut area.
Okay.
And there again, there was a heavy focus on data, both qualitative and quantitative. And I found it so interesting, but I felt like I didn't have the skills to be able to interrogate the data in the way that I wanted to. Okay,
so let's talk about education then. How did you think education either benefited or kind of maybe hindered your experience trying to infiltrate the industry?
I think I was fortunate in the fact that I went to a Russell Group university, and that always carries some sort of leverage. But at the same time, lots of people at university are able to do internships alongside their degrees because they come from a certain socioeconomic background. For me, while I did an internship, it was something that weighed heavily on me because I didn't necessarily have the background where I was able to afford doing an internship because often you're not paid or you're not paid very much. You do need to weigh up whether or not you're able to go down that route, which is something that I had to do.
God. And what do you think is a struggle for, so just kind of moving away from you specifically, what is a struggle for a young black woman, or, you know, just a young black person in general, your age, at that very point, trying to make these applications, trying to secure kind of your job beyond university? What was the main challenge, would you say? Apart from, would you say it's networking? Because I know you mentioned.
Yeah, I think networking, and maybe not on the outset having that access to certain resources or people who can guide you or show you how to get into a certain industry, how to build those skills. Those things may not be readily available to you as a young black woman, and you need to do more exploration and find your way in, and it's a lot harder to do.
And the reason I asked, as well, is because I think this whole networking piece is, it's just such an important term, and it's such an important thing to be just on top of. And I think being a black woman, for me personally, just growing up from the age of like 16, basically, it's just been such a big thing in my life, is just always networking in any industry I wanted to get into, any space. And I think being black, it's just so much more important, because we don't have, generally speaking, that bigger network in the diaspora, so in the UK for me.
100%.
But kind of moving away from that, and talking about Black History Month in general, what do you think about Black History Month?
I think it's great that you've asked this question, because Black History Month resonates in so many different ways with different black people. Not all black people feel the same way about Black History Month, and not all of them even agree with the concept of Black History Month. I think it sort of started as an American tradition to celebrate the achievements and those who are spearheading change for civil rights and abolishing slavery. But I think it's evolved now, especially in the UK context, to be about not only the history but the present for black people. So celebrating the achievements of people in industries varied who are spearheading change or involved in really exciting projects, and also looking to the future, so exposing people to ways that they can get involved in different industries, which is so amazing. And so for me, it is about a period of exploration, and that's how I found out through Black History Month about Black Tech Fest and all the amazing things that they were doing. There are industry experts from Google, Microsoft, TikTok, who are all leading workshops or giving talks. For me, anyways, it's a period of self-reflection where I think about my position as a black woman, and often that is related to my work and being a minority in the tech space.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love how you kind of, because I was wondering how you would kind of expand on that, and just talking about the difference between having a Black History Month that focuses on history and maybe some sad stuff, as opposed to having a Black History Month that can just make the most of the attention that black people are getting, for example, in data, and just actually make it a positive thing. And have, you know, black leaders talking and make black, you know, connections happen for black people basically within data. Why is it so important to have black people in senior leadership positions in data for you? I mean, obviously we have Chris right next to you, who is the head of data products at Kubrick, and, you know, he was your trainer. But just generally speaking, how did that impact you actually with having Chris as a trainer, and what's the importance of having black people in senior leadership positions in the industry in general?
It had a huge impact on me, actually. It was really refreshing to see Chris as the trainer on the data product consultant stream. And while me and Chris never really had a conversation about his experience of being black in the tech space, for me, it was great to have him as a role model, someone who I could look up to, and it helped me to see a space for myself in this industry and actually think I can carve out a long-lasting career for myself. Because if you don't have those black individuals in senior leadership, it's hard for you to see a path where you can reach there.
Absolutely.
So I think
couldn't agree more.
It feels good to hear that. Thanks, Senna.
Yeah. And Chris, I just wanted to come to you as well. Just I think that's a nice little segue. How did you get into data? What's that journey been like for you personally?
Okay, as an individual, I've always been interested in data. I had a very good knowledge of mathematics, and as well, literature is a very big part of data that I often miss because qualitative data out there. So I had very good interest in that. My first degree, I started off with statistics, which is very, very data driven. But in my first degree, I didn't really appreciate in the first year, I didn't really appreciate the need and how you can actually use this data. Then I decided to combine economics to my degree in my second year. So I was doing statistics and economics at the same time. So that really paid off because I was able to see statistics from a data perspective and how this is used in making economic decision as well. So like we want to do things like time series analysis, we want to do like inferential statistics. You can actually see what the output would be and how it will work together. So that was one big area in terms of how my data journey started. Then once I was out of uni, I tried to work with organizations where data is actually driven. One of the big projects I worked on straight out of university was actually something very interesting. It was on crude oil fiscalization, which was data. So the crude oil in tank, we have to actually use data to understand the proportion of water, oil, condensate. So that was very, very massive project for me. So once I was done with those bits, I moved into core data practice, and I'd also had a role with JP Morgan. And with that role, I did a lot of data work over about in the course of 6 years, or supporting several teams for financial crime or prevention or funds accounting, all with very, very data-driven roles. Then post that, I worked with Barclays as well. Barclays was data-driven, from data from several systems, how they use that in making informed decision. And then the opportunity at Kubrick presented itself, which was a very fantastic one. And I took up that role to head the data product stream. So with my role as the head of data product at Kubrick, I create the training for the consultants. I support them all through the training journey. I also support clients by working on clients' projects as well to facilitate data-driven decision. So that's been my data journey, and I still say it. I feel like data journey is unending.
No, honestly, I feel like this is one of the kind of only sectors right now that's just changing so quickly, like just developing so fast. So this really is, it will actually just be the beginning for everyone all the time. Like it's not, two ends of the spectrum here looking at Senna and Chris. But do you know what, as you're talking about that kind of crude oil, that project, that first crude oil project you mentioned.
The crude oil.
So obviously very, very like amazing thing to be part of as a young black man in data who's just joined the industry. What was it like telling your family, like your parents, this is what I want to get into? Was there any conversation around that? Because, I think I'd just be interested to know how that was for you, actually.
So with my parents, especially my mom. My mom is very, very traditional. So when I said my mom was going to study statistics, what she thought about was mathematics, and then she related it. I'm going to be a math teacher.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
So that was the way she saw it.
Not surprised.
I said that was just a very, very tiny bit of what I'll be doing. But then my mom always would have had the passion for developing others. So she thought that was the end goal, but I just explained to her that I love data. Then one big thing was when I was going for the crude oil fiscalization project as well, it was in a remote area. So remote, turbulent area. So it was in Fucados. Fucados is a crude oil export terminal owned by Shell in West Africa. So I had to use like helicopters going into there. So at that point, my mom started seeing data differently. Started seeing that data is actually not just about the chalk and white, the blackboard and chalk training, that is actually data driven, driving all the decisions.
Real life influence, exactly.
Yeah, she was really proud of it. And I think that was for me, that was a kick for her. That was a big transformation. And then I was really young. I think I was about 21 years old.
Yeah, and it's just such an important conversation that lots of young black people are having with their parents, whatever industry they're in, regardless of it being data or not. It's just, like you do hear lots of people having a type of conversation with their parents, and then if it's not, I think, law or engineering or some kind of doctor, exactly, then it definitely will be a very interesting conversation. So I did English literature at university, and I heard from a lot of, I'm originally from Eritrea, and I'd like tell uncles and aunties or people, I'm studying English at uni. Oh, so you're going to be an English teacher? Like, absolutely not. I just want a first class in English so I can just go and do whatever else I want to do in life. So that's good to know.
In my own case, why it clicked for my mom was my dad worked in the oil and gas industry as well. So her seeing me studying statistics and economics and then relating that back into my dad's industry. My dad was an engineer. Yeah. So see me relating that part of studying statistics and then completing a project in an oil and gas industry. She started seeing data
Yeah, exactly.
in a very, very different
Yeah, I
way.
can
So
imagine.
for me, that was a big deal.
No, that's amazing, Chris. And what do you think about actually just moving slightly away from your journey, but also just because we were talking before about data teams and like almost the look of a data team, the people that the people who are creating the very apps that we use every day, and just how important it is to have diverse data teams. So what does that even mean for you? Like, why is it important to have a diverse data team of people who are creating some of the apps that we'll be using?
Yeah, from my perspective, having a diverse team means building a diverse application. Having a diverse team means building a robust application. It gives you the opportunity to consider various perspectives. So I'm aware of a recent incident of a public sector application that was developed. The application didn't consider diversity to a very large extent, and when it was released for use, it had a significant negative impact on regions where the population were very diverse. They couldn't read the instruction on the application because it was captured only in English language. So if you have a diverse team, they can actually have a broader perspective to developing things.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think just going back to what you talked about with that public sector app, I just wanted to go back to that because I think that's huge. Like, it's definitely a big problem if we're creating apps for people to use and a big chunk of people can't use it because they can't understand it, because they are from a different ethnicity and maybe don't speak English or don't understand the way that app was made. So I think problems like that I'm always hearing about, and it just reminded me of someone I had on the podcast last year. Really, really senior woman in a very, very kind of lots of leadership positions across different boards. And she was involved, she wasn't involved in this, but we were talking about the hand sanitizer apps being created across the UK. Like, I think the first round of hand sanitizer apps that were rolled out. And for some reason they weren't working for some people. So it would work sometimes and it wouldn't work sometimes. And then what they found out after was it was actually not working for black people. So black hands, it wasn't recognizing, but for white hands it was. So obviously a huge, huge problem, again, similar to the public sector app where you've got a big chunk of people who can't even understand the thing that was meant for them. And then it just all comes down to the fact that who was creating that app? Was it a bunch of white men, or were there some women, some black people, dare I say, some black people? So that's the big question that I think we're starting to ask now, which, is just all kind of centers around data and people within data.
Yeah, for me, with that perspective, I feel like it's industry knowledge, and as well, we as black, we have to play a role in that, and that role is we have to educate people. Why you have to educate people is, for instance, people think Africa is a country. People think Africa is a country, so
Still?
Yeah.
No, I refuse to believe.
Yeah, like when you're traveling, people say to me things like, "Are you traveling to Africa?"
Yeah.
It's just like me saying, "Are you traveling to
Yeah,
Europe?"
yeah.
That's quite broad.
No, there's so much that we just need to kind of unpack with.
And I feel that that's a big part on we as black as well, to take ownership of that, to educate people on that as well. And especially when you get to the leadership position as a black person as well, you have to encourage, you have to be able to pitch to say, how do we build a diverse team? How do we get people from different backgrounds to join our team to ensure that our product is considering different perspectives? Another illustration is you've built an app, right? You want to do a test, and let's imagine you're from a particular race. You're running your test based on the race that aligns closer to you.
Yeah.
You will not get a complete perspective. You will not
true.
get complete output. That's why you look at companies like, for instance, typical illustration is Instagram. If I make an Instagram post now and I leave my comment in my traditional language, which is Igbo, right? If I send out that message, you can click on translate instantly and Instagram will translate. That's diversity at work. That's we bringing things on board. I know it's going to take some time, but I believe organizations are beginning to get aware as well.
Yeah.
Something else I really appreciate about diversity, about this, I think this is very personal. I believe everybody has something to offer. I believe everybody has something to offer in a different way. You have to make that balance to support everybody in the team. You have to make that balance to support every user of your application. You have to make that balance to build a robust team. I think it's a journey. It's
Definitely.
unending.
Yeah.
It's unending, but it's just something that will take time, but
I agree.
we'll get there.
Can I ask, actually, for both of you, what you think needs to happen to get more black people actually starting out in the industry? So obviously we have you, Senna, your journey is really just quite nice to hear, because it's, you know, wasn't traditionally STEM.
Yeah.
And then just what you studied at university, how you applied, you know, your interest to data, you know, in data to that, and then developed from there. And then obviously you, Chris, you're really, really successful, and you're at such a great, you know, stage of your journey within data. What changes need to be made for Black people to actually get into spaces that require so much training, so much sometimes money involved behind, you know, using software and training with software, and then sometimes just a lot of experiences needed that as a young Black person who maybe you're from a different socioeconomic background to others, it'd just be harder kind of infiltrating. So what needs to happen?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned earlier, there are certain routes and career paths that as a young Black person you're sort of steered towards, like you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer. And so I think lots of people don't necessarily think about entering data or the tech sphere, but they have a lot of potential. And so it's finding ways to seek out that potential and nurture it.
Yeah.
I think for me, Kubrick was an amazing opportunity because you didn't have to have a STEM background to apply. It wasn't a prerequisite.
Yeah.
Although many applicants do, you didn't need to. And I think the testing process, though it was rigorous, it was mainly looking for aptitude, which I think is really important, your potential to be able to excel in the sphere.
Agreed.
And I think that there need to be more schemes like that out there, not only at university or postgraduate level, but in schools, maybe some sort of tutoring bursary where you can gain the skills needed to then enter the tech arena.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. And I think just having more institutions that have that awareness of, okay, you know, let's remove this bias now. Let's understand that there's a whole chunk of people out here in the UK that could be amazing, but haven't had the opportunities to be amazing up until now. Yeah. So having that awareness across different spaces, I think, is so important. And like you touched upon, Kubrick is definitely more aware of now.
I think just adding to that, I'll see, for me, very, very much aligns to what Senna mentioned. One is cultural shift. So from believing less that you have to study law, accountancy, or medicine, or engineering to be successful as a Black person. So there needs to be that cultural shift. Then secondly, I think another big part, personally, which very, very much depends on the Black people themselves, is self-belief. I feel like that's one big part here. So you need to just get out there, believe you can actually achieve that, believe you can actually do that. When you're struggling, don't think you're struggling because you're Black. That's for me, that's one big part. Don't think you're deficient in any way. Just believe that everybody struggles. And you struggling doesn't have anything to do with your race. And when the right opportunity presents itself, you will be there to take it. So for me, that's one big takeaway. If you say to me what I'll say to my son about him being Black and how that will impact on his career, I think self-belief, not believing that he must be a doctor. Then when it comes to the corporate organization as well, I believe what corporations need to understand is believing in equity, believing that different people from different background, gender, sexual orientation, just believe that different people will have different needs and will have different support.
It works on both ends, like you're saying, right? It works. You as an individual need to kind of remove any kind of self-doubt, because there's so much doubt already against you in the industry. Remove that doubt from yourself. You can do it. And then again, you know, going on the other end of the spectrum, it's companies and institutions need to also appreciate having diverse data teams, and then when the two comes together, hopefully we can have some more Black people in data.
I think that I feel like that would be the magic. The magic is that the fact is like the scale is just tilted against you to some extent. If you further tilt it against you, that makes things even more challenging.
No, of course. Yeah, I agree, and it definitely does help seeing people like yourself in leadership positions, Chris, as well. For the next generation of Black people in data. I think that was a really good conversation. Thank you both for joining me as well, and happy Black History Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.